What happens when the person you trusted more than anyone, the one who promised to be by your side through every triumph and every failure, suddenly turns your world upside down and walks away with everything you've built? Tonight on Roots of Revenge, we bring you a story so shocking it feels like betrayal itself has a voice, and it's whispering directly into your ear. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to Roots of Revenge, hit that like button, and comment below. Because what you're about to witness will leave you questioning everything you think you know about love, loyalty, and vengeance. The lights in the studio burn hotter than usual, reflecting off the polished floors, and the audience shifts uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the storm before it even arrives. At the center of it all sits a man whose calm exterior barely hides the tension rippling under his skin. His jaw is tight, his eyes distant, and his fingers tap against the leather armrest like a restrained heartbeat. Across from him, the host, notebook in hand but eyes wide, leans forward as if the slightest movement could ignite the truth that's about to erupt. "My wife took everything in the divorce," he begins, voice steady but cold. "And she had no idea what she was really taking." A hush falls over the audience, like a collective intake of breath, as though they can already feel the weight of those words pressing down on them. "Everything?" the host asks cautiously. "The houses, the cars, the bank accounts, the company shares she thought were hers," he says, pausing to let the gravity sink in. "She made sure I walked away with nothing but my name. And yet, names don't build empires." A few scattered gasps ripple through the room, phones raised, fingers already typing, social media waiting to explode. "We built everything together, or at least I believed we did," he continues, eyes narrowing, recalling the years they spent side by side, climbing, winning, and surviving. "She was there when no one else was. She knew the nights I cried in silence, the dreams I held too close to speak aloud. She was my partner, until the moment she wasn't." The host nods slowly, unsure how to navigate the tension rising like a storm. "And when she filed for divorce, you were—" "I was shocked," he admits, his voice dropping lower, almost to a whisper. "I thought I knew her. I thought I understood her heart. But what I learned was far more dangerous. I learned that trust is fragile, and sometimes it's a weapon." A woman in the audience presses her hand to her mouth. Somewhere, a camera operator shifts uneasily. "She walked in with a smile," he says, his eyes darkening as he remembers the day the papers were signed. "She acted like it was a victory, like the world was watching and she had won. She didn't know. She had no idea she was playing checkers while I was playing chess." The host leans in, voice measured. "And what did she take that she shouldn't have?" He smirks faintly, a shadow of something cruel and brilliant in it. "She took the visible pieces, the trophies everyone could see, the accounts, the houses, the cars, the things anyone could measure, but she didn't understand the things that mattered, the agreements, the partnerships, the seeds planted for the future. She thought she was taking me, but really, she was taking a version of me that no longer existed." The audience sits forward, silent now, hanging on every word, hearts pounding in sync with the tension in the room. "And when did she realize the mistake?" the host asks, voice low, almost fearing the answer. 3 months after the papers were signed," he says, leaning back in his chair, eyes narrowing like a predator reflecting on prey. "That's when the first announcement dropped. The new venture. The company she never thought I'd launch. The partnership she laughed at. The valuation she scoffed at. And that's when she understood. She hadn't won. Not really." The host exhales, almost inaudible, and the audience murmurs ripple through the room like the first drops of a coming storm. "So, this was your revenge?" the host presses carefully. "Not revenge," he says slowly, a dangerous glint in his eyes. This was survival. This was building something they couldn't take from me, no matter how hard they tried. A camera zooms in on his face, every line, every shadow telling the story of betrayal and silent triumph. She told me once that I was nothing without her, he continues, voice low and controlled. And for a moment, I believed her. I thought she had all the power, but power isn't given. It's taken, earned, and sometimes quietly created while the world is distracted by noise. He leans forward, almost whispering now, as if sharing a secret with each person in the room. She didn't see the groundwork laid, the networks built, the future secured. She thought she had everything, but in reality, she took only what I allowed her to see. A collective shiver passes through the audience. The lights in the studio seem colder now, sharper, like they're cutting through the thick tension hanging in the air. The audience sits in near silence, the kind of quiet that feels like everyone is holding their breath, waiting for the next truth to land like a hammer. He leans forward slightly, elbows on his knees, voice measured but with a dangerous edge. After the divorce, she thought she had silenced me, he begins. But silence is a choice, and I chose to build while she celebrated her victory. The host shifts uncomfortably, sensing that what comes next will cross boundaries no one in the audience has ever witnessed on live television. She doesn't know, he continues, how much information was hidden in plain sight, agreements in motion, deals that matured the moment the papers were signed. She thought she had won everything, but she only won what was visible. And visible, he says slowly, a shadow of a smile appearing, is never the whole story. A murmur spreads through the audience, soft but sharp, like the first cracks in a glass dome. We've got messages, the host says cautiously, reaching for a tablet, from weeks before the divorce was finalized. Some leaked, some private. Do you want to go over them now? He nods, fingers steepled together. Show them. Let everyone see the part of the story that was never supposed to leave the shadows. The screen behind them flickers, and the first message appears, her words, confident, cutting, assuming she had already won. I'm taking what's mine, nothing will stop me, it reads. The audience reacts immediately, some leaning forward, some shaking their heads. The man's voice cuts through the murmurs, calm but laced with a venom barely contained. She thought she could dictate the narrative. She thought she could control not just me, but how the world viewed me. And for a moment she almost did. The host's eyes widen. Almost? Almost, he repeats, voice low. Because while she was counting her trophies, I was quietly planting seeds no one could touch, no one could see. Deals that would only come alive once the divorce was final. Projects she dismissed as irrelevant. Partnerships she mocked as trivial. The audience sits forward, some whispering, others gripping their seats. Do you have proof of this? The host asks, leaning closer. Everything is documented, he says, nodding toward the screens behind them, which now display a cascade of contracts, emails, and timestamps. She didn't read closely. She didn't notice the clauses, the contingencies, the strings attached to things she thought were hers. He pauses, letting the weight of that sink in. She thought she was smart. She thought she had won. The room is silent except for the faint hum of the cameras. And when did she realize? The host asks again, though the answer seems almost rhetorical now. When the first press release dropped, he says, leaning back, eyes dark and distant. The company she laughed at became headline news. Investors called. Partners reached out. Suddenly, the empire she thought was gone was alive, and she wasn't a part of it. That's when the realization hit. She didn't just lose an empire, she lost her sense of control. She lost the illusion of power. The audience gasps audibly, some whispering in disbelief, some recording the moment on their phones. And how did she respond? the host asks, voice low, wary. He exhales slowly, a sharp sound that seems to fill the room. She tried to reach me, he says. Messages, calls, even mutual friends as messengers. She begged. She offered deals to get back in. She thought I would forgive or that I would explain, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not after the betrayal. The screen flickers again, this time showing a series of texts, desperate, pleading. The audience recoils slightly, the words raw and intimate. It's almost tragic, the host says quietly. Watching someone realize too late. He shakes his head. No, the man interrupts, voice sharp. It's inevitable. Consequences always catch up. She built her victory on assumptions, on perception, on what she thought was mine. And in the end, perception isn't reality. Reality is what survives. The host swallows, realizing this is no ordinary confession. So all this was intentional? He asks cautiously. Not revenge, the man repeats. Strategy, preservation. I didn't want to hurt her. I wanted to protect myself and the things that truly mattered. She didn't know she was playing with fire, and fire has a way of revealing truths no one wants to see. A quiet shiver runs through the audience. Someone whispers, "That's genius and cruel." Genius? He says, voice low, almost a growl. Maybe, but it's also necessity. If someone can take your life and walk away thinking they've won, then you either let them destroy you or you make sure they never even touch what truly counts. The host leans in, tone careful. And tonight you're showing all of this publicly for the first time. Yes. The tension in the studio now feels like it could snap at any moment. Every eye is locked on him, every ear waiting for the next word to fall like a hammer. It wasn't enough for her to take what she could touch, he begins, voice low and controlled. She needed the world to believe she had conquered me completely, that I was nothing without her. The host shifts uncomfortably, glancing at the live feed, aware that this is no ordinary confession. And yet, the man continues, here I am, and here she isn't. That alone tells the story better than any statement, any interview, any social media post ever could. He leans forward, eyes piercing the audience, voice a dangerous whisper that cuts through the silence. Do you want to see what happens when someone underestimates you? When they think they've stripped you bare? The host swallows, nods slightly, and the screen behind them flickers to life. Leaked emails, confidential contracts, screenshots of private calls, proof of the intricate web he had quietly spun while she celebrated what she thought was victory. The audience gasps, leaning forward in disbelief as the magnitude of what they're witnessing sinks in. Every detail she ignored, every clause she laughed at, every plan she dismissed as irrelevant, he says, voice low but sharp, was my safety net, my armor, my quiet revenge. She thought she knew the game. She didn't even know it had rules she couldn't understand. A murmur runs through the crowd, a mixture of shock and admiration. And when she realized, the host asks cautiously, almost afraid of the answer. He lets out a slow, measured exhale. Panic, he says, eyes darkening. She realized she had been a pawn in a game she didn't even see. Calls came, messages, attempts to negotiate, begging, offers to reclaim some part of what she thought she owned. And do you know what I did? He pauses, letting the silence stretch until it presses against every corner of the room. I didn't respond. I didn't even flinch. Because if you feed the person who betrayed you, you only give them more power. And I wasn't going to give her another victory. Not one more. The audience leans forward, murmuring softly, the tension so thick it feels tangible. And then came the confrontation, he continues, eyes narrowing, recalling the moment when all the private plotting collided with public exposure. A mutual friend tried to act as a messenger. She thought if she could shame me, humiliate me, If she could make the world see me as powerless, she could regain control. But the moment she saw the new contracts, the partners, the plans she never noticed, the moment she saw that the empire she coveted was now untouchable without her, that's when the real fear set in. The host swallows hard. So you confronted her? No, he says, shaking his head slowly. I didn't need to. The proof spoke for itself. The humiliation was not mine to deliver. It was her own. She realized, in real time, that she had walked away thinking she had everything, when, in truth, she had nothing but her own assumptions. The audience gasps audibly, some whispering to each other. And the public? The host asks. The public had no idea, he replies, voice dropping. Until the announcements went live. Investors noticed, journalists noticed, friends noticed. Suddenly, everyone who had assumed she'd won was forced to recalibrate. That's when the whispers began. The questions, the doubts, the fascination with what really happened behind closed doors. He leans back, a faint smirk on his face, almost predator-like. And she? She tried to negotiate again, this time through social media, through intermediaries, through mutual contacts. But it was too late. The narrative was no longer hers to control. The truth had a way of exposing everything she thought she could hide. The host glances down at the notes, then back up, voice cautious. This sounds ruthless. He shrugs slightly, voice calm but resolute. Ruthless, maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. Because betrayal leaves scars, and when someone underestimates the damage they can cause, it's up to you to ensure that the consequences are measured, precise, and permanent. A ripple of murmurs passes through the audience. And when she finally realized she couldn't touch you? The host asks. Shock, he says, eyes flashing. She realized that the years she spent believing she had power over me were built on illusion, that she had misread every signal, misunderstood every plan, and overlooked the one thing she could never take, my resolve. The camera pans across the audience, capturing stunned faces, wide eyes, some mouths hanging open. And tonight, we're showing this story for the first time, uncensored? The host asks. Yes, he replies, voice firm, unwavering. Because the world deserves to see what happens when someone underestimates the person they betray. Because the truth, once revealed, has a way of rewriting the past and shaping the future. He leans forward sly. The studio is silent for a moment after the last words hang in the air, the kind of silence that makes you feel every heartbeat in the room. Then, slowly, the audience begins to murmur, the sound growing into a low roar of disbelief, awe, and whispered speculation. Phones rise in every direction, recording, live streaming, capturing a story that feels like it will haunt headlines for months. Outside, social media has already exploded. Snippets of the interview are trending, hashtags forming faster than anyone could anticipate. Comments are pouring in, shock, admiration, disbelief, outrage, all colliding in real time, creating a storm of public attention that no one saw coming. And somewhere in that chaos, she watches. The woman who once thought she had stripped him of everything sees for the first time the true cost of her assumptions. The empire she believes she claimed is alive, thriving, untouchable, and she is not part of it. Emails, texts, private messages, and confidential agreements that she ignored now form the backbone of a story that's rewriting public perception in an instant. The host leans back, scanning the audience, whose faces are pale, wide-eyed, mouths agape, some shaking their heads in disbelief. This is unprecedented, the host says softly. I've never seen anything like this. You didn't just survive, you completely turned the tables. He nods slowly, voice calm but eyes alight with the memory of each calculated move. Survival is one thing, control is another. And when someone underestimates you, you don't just survive, you demonstrate that everything they believed about power, victory, and betrayal was wrong. The cameras cut to the crowd again. Journalists whispering to each other, influencers already drafting tweets, some shaking in awe at the precision of what they've just witnessed. Clips from the interview are already trending, the public reaction instantaneous. Analysts begin dissecting every phrase, every pause, every subtle smile, trying to determine how much was calculated and how much was raw emotion. And the media? The host asks. They're losing their minds, he says, a faint smirk on his face. Columns, articles, late-night commentary, it's everywhere. The story is unfolding faster than they can process it, and that's exactly how it should be. A woman in the audience whispers, "It's like watching a chess game where one player was 10 moves ahead the whole time." He nods, eyes scanning the crowd, seeing not just their reactions, but feeling the gravity of the moment. Every whisper she sent, every attempt to regain control, every plea to be recognized, it was met with silence. Because silence speaks louder than any argument. Silence allows the truth to do its work. And the truth, he says, voice dropping like a knife, is that some people never see the game until it's over. She finally saw it, and the world saw it too. Phones flash again, audience members capturing every angle, every reaction. A young man in the front row whispers to his friend, "I can't believe she thought she had him. He planned this from the shadows the whole time." The host nods, still processing the storm they've just unleashed. "And what's next?" "Next," he says, voice low, controlled, "is letting the consequences ripple. Social media will dissect, the media will speculate, and she will confront the reality she ignored for too long. And every person watching, every person listening, will know the truth. That betrayal has a cost, and underestimating someone who has nothing left to lose is the gravest mistake you can make." The audience erupts again. Applause mixing with murmurs, some cheering, some shaking their heads in awe. The cameras pan across every face, capturing the astonishment, the disbelief, the recognition of a story so raw and human that it feels almost like witnessing history. "And tonight," he continues, voice firm, resolute, "we are not just telling a story. We are witnessing the aftermath of choices, the weight of ambition, the collision of trust and betrayal, and the consequences of underestimating someone whose patience and planning were sharper than anyone imagined." The host leans forward, eyes wide, realizing this is more than an interview. It's a revelation. So the world knows now. The truth is out. He nods slowly, letting the room absorb the impact. And the story doesn't end here. It will be discussed, dissected, and debated for months, maybe years. But the lesson is clear. What you think you take may not be yours to claim, and what you think you leave behind may carry the power to reshape everything. The audience is on their feet now, some clapping, some whispering, some still frozen in awe. Cameras capture every angle, every reaction, broadcasting the raw emotion of a moment that feels eternal. The red light pulses steadily, a heartbeat of truth in a world of assumptions and illusions. He leans back in his chair, eyes scanning the studio one last time. "So now," he says, "Vo,